So, welcome back to the third lecture of our fourth week where we are. So, in the first two lectures of this week, we talked about the forces, velocity, tension relationship in the different kind of muscle fiber. We talked about the fast twitch fiber, we talked about the slow twitch fiber, we talked about the isometric contraction, if you remember, of the muscle fibers, and most of these measurements are in terms of sarcomere lengths. You can of course do it in whole muscle also. And one point which I highlighted is that force generation is a function of the myosin subtypes which are present there. So, a fast twitch fiber will have a different myosin subtype as compared to a slow twitch fiber. And where we concluded the second lecture is, there are two terminologies which I introduce, the intrafusal fiber and the extrafusal fiber. And I told you that we will continue further with the intrafusal fiber, because that is where the border between nervous system and the muscular system is very hazy. What I meant by that. So, keep these two words in mind before we resume further. So, let us get back on the slides. So, we are into week 4 and lecture 3, W4 L3. So, keep these two words in mind, extrafusal fiber and intrafusal fiber. Okay. Whatever I underline is the common thing, the rest is these two different aspects, extra and intra. Keep this in mind and let us talk about a situation. I am standing here, right. Say for example, I get a hit like this, right. I really do not feel the pain that much, unless I have been hit very badly, continuously I am being hit. What happens in a boxing ring where somebody gets a hit, or you must have seen in a boxing ring or somewhere, it's a movie, somebody gets a, like the muscle kind of bend and it comes back to its original position, right. This thing happens every moment of our life. The muscle gets distorted and comes back to its original position. Very transiently it gets distorted. You must have seen that somebody hits you like this and then the muscle comes back to its original position. Like it does not remain like this only, fine. How that happens? So, it's a very simple question I am asking you. How a muscle which gets a mechanical hit like this comes back to its original position? So, if you have to break this problem, then from a very engineering perspective, if you try to break this problem, you have to break this problem in a logical way. So, say for example, this is a system and it comes back to its original position. Suppose, imagine if this were having a flexible system. So, I bend it, it comes back. So, it should have some form of a memory, it can come back. It means the muscle which I am hitting comes back to its original position should have some form of a memory or some form of a signal which, say for example, I distort the muscle like this, I hit it like this, or I hit it like this, I hit it like this, there is a distortion in the muscle. So, it means as soon as I remove the force, so if I keep on holding it, it will remain like this. Otherwise, the very moment the force is released, it comes back to its original position. And this is not an elastic phenomena, by the way, to tell you. It is not an elastic phenomena. There is something, part of it may be, but it is not the whole thing. It is something much more in depth is hidden. What is it? So, all our muscles have a sensing elements which could sense the change in length which is happening when there is a force which is generated or which has been exposed to it. Okay? Is it making sense what I am trying to tell you? So, whenever you are hitting somebody like this, you hit me like this, there is a force which is generated on this muscle, and as soon as I release the force, it comes back to its original position. So, all our muscle have some specific sensors which, now mark my word very carefully now, which could sense the change in length of the fiber. And this is not sarcomere. Sarcomere is where the length is changing. There is something else which could sense it, and as soon as that senses it, it sends a spiral message all the way to the nervous system, and the nervous system then sends a message to the muscle to come back to its original position. Okay? Let me repeat it. So, there is a signal, a force, a muscle exposed to a force. Of course, muscle gets stretched, but yet within the muscle there are some very unique elements. Those elements senses the change in length, but does not remain silent. They sense this signal through a wire which is part of, through a cord which is part of the nervous system to the spinal cord, or sometimes to the brain, mostly to the spinal cord, and the information gets processed, and there is a relay route which brings it back and tells the muscle, you come back to your original position. So, what is happening first? There is a force generated on the muscle that leads to the stretching of the muscle. Fine. This stretched muscle comes back to its original position by a nervous route, because the neurons tells the muscle you have to come back to it, to your original position. You have to relax back to your original position. There is a stretch, there is a contraction, there is something, and you have to come back. This is one of the most fundamental circuit at the interface of nervous system and muscular system, and this circuit is called stretch reflex arc. It is a reflex action. Stretch like a twitch, it is a reflex action. Stretch, reflex, arc. So, if you divide the word, there is a stretch in the muscle. So, here I am having okay. So, I pick up an area out here in the muscle. So, I apply a force with a hammer. So, once I apply the force, if this is the area of my choice, what I have picked up, so there is a change in length, there is a stretch here, this is the stretch. this stretch is brought back to its original shape like this, and there is an involvement of the nervous system in bringing it back. And when we open up this problem, we open up this problem at different level. So, first level of opening up this problem is, so now we are entering into the domain which is at the interface of nerve and muscle, stretch, reflex arc, which is a reflex circuit, which is one of the most primitive circuit, stretch reflex arc circuit. And mind it, I haven't formally introduced you to the neurons yet. I am just giving you a feel of it that will help you to appreciate the problem much better than the formal way of just introducing neurons. So, here you have what are the players? First of all, there is a muscle which is getting stretched, then there is a sensor within muscle or this muscle itself can do this, as both act as a sensor also. The sensor within muscle which measure or senses the change in length as delta L in the muscle due to the, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention something. There is an external force which is leading to the stretch, okay? External force, right? There is an external force. So, measure or senses the change in length in the muscle due to the external force. Now, next it relays the signal through a pathway after sensing this change in length. Say for example, initial length of the muscle before the force generation is 5 and say 5 unit, this is the length. Then post force generation it becomes a 6 unit, there is an increase in 1 unit. So, this sensor will sense 1 unit increase, and this 1 unit increase signal will be sent to the central processing unit. We will later introduce it formally, central processing unit. This central processing unit or the CPU, which we are denoting as the nervous system, then process this information. So, it has a processor, a RAM processor, which is a processor which is processing it. This processing could happen at 2 levels theoretically and practically, which happen, it could either happen at the brain level or it could happen at the spinal cord level. Now, this information is processed and it calibrates that there is a change in delta L change in length, which is in this case is say 1 unit change. Then what this will do, this measures this change and after that it sends a process signal to the muscle back to tell it regain your length, and then muscle execute its contraction to regain its length. Simultaneously, this central processing unit sends another signal, which I am putting on the lighter green color, to this sensor, because there is a change in the length of the sensor too. Regain, let me just pick up another color so that you can regain your base configuration. It is like configuration. It is like you are using a galvanometer or voltmeter. So, you see there is shift because of, this is 0, there is a shift. You have to come back, the galvanometer has to come back, or a voltmeter or an ammeter has to come back to its original position before it can make the second set of reading. Otherwise, from there it will go further up, right? You cannot afford that. So, you needed it to come back to its ground state, right. So, for such a simple circuit, you think the amount of complexity it undergoes. So, this is one of the very fundamental circuit within our body, which brings us a formal entry or a gateway into the world of amazing world of neuroscience. But then in the previous slide I told you, remember these two words, intrafusal fiber and extrafusal fiber, and why I told you this. Now, let us complete the story. Now, these two words, this original muscle what you see, all the muscles in our body, these are extrafusal fibers, extrafusal fibers. Now, within the extrafusal fibers, so if you see extrafusal fibers, so if you see the muscles like this, skeletal muscles with the striations and like this, the multinucleated bodies and striations like this. In between you will see some very small stuff like this, a spindle shaped structures like this. And these spindle shaped structures, which I am drawing in red now, could be very prominently seen in the snakes. As a matter of fact, many of these have been discovered in the snakes. The snake's body, snake moves like this, right? They have lot of these sensors, and these red ones, what you see, are called intrafusal fiber, and this is your extrafusal fiber, and these intrafusal fibers are nothing but this sensory elements. These intrafusal fibers are sensory elements. These are also called, there is another word which are used for these intrafusal fiber. These are also called, because of their shape, they have a shape like this. Okay. These are also multinucleated. These are also called muscle spindle. Okay. So, Now I introduce you to another dimension of muscle, but now we are also introducing something more. Now we have to redraw the circuit. Now I have shown you the anatomy of it. These are the extrafusal fibers. So our body is, skeletal muscle of our body are mostly, a large portion of it is nothing but extrafusal fiber. But there is a small portion of it, very small, very few percentage of it, which is intrafusal fibers. Now having said this, now think of from the developmental biology perspective. I told you that here you have a population which is destined to become muscle. Okay? So myogenic lineage, myoblast, right? From myoblast I told you some form, a chunk form myocytes. From the myocytes they form myotubes, and then of course followed by myofibers. And if you see the hierarchy, you must have, if you remember, if I go back to that hierarchy, so there you see the hierarchy, how this works. Now in this whole process, when this whole hierarchy is being happening, it is moving like this, different level, this is going into the smaller size, and if you reverse back you are increasing the size. In this process, now coming back where I was, in this whole process some of these myocytes or maybe myoblast, it is never clear. Now we are just talking about these myoblasts are for skeletal muscle. So though at this stage it is decided which will go for the skeletal route, which will go for the cardiac route, and which will go for the the smooth muscle route. Now at this point we are only talking about the skeletal muscle. If we talk about the skeletal muscle, at this stage there is a second level, either at the myoblast stage or the myocyte, or even further back at the progenitor level, PG level, there is a small population of it which becomes intrafusal. And to the best of my knowledge, as of now, no one has been successful to figure out that which one will become intrafusal and what was that small population, and how from here, if we take this, how we can convert them into intrafusal. There are a few works. I'll give you some reference material you can go through if you are interested, that what becomes intrafusal. But these intrafusal, as compared to the other bunch, which the large number, showing the upper arrow showing the large number, the extrafusal, the fundamental difference is again in the myosin. The myosin subtype of these intrafusal fibers are very similar to the myosin of cardiac muscle. We will come later into that, what kind of myosin fibers which are present there. But the myosin chains are entirely different of the intrafusal fiber as compared to extrafusal fiber within the skeletal muscle. Okay. Now, having introduced this in concept of intrafusal and extrafusal, what we will do next is we will develop the circuit from here. I told you that, so this is where the spindles are sitting, and spindles are exactly, you can consider them as spindle shaped myotubes. Okay. These are the spindles which are sitting there, and these spindles also have multinucleated bodies like this, just like the extrafusal fibers, but they are distinct, and there are some very unique stains by which you can label them. Now, whenever there is an impact falling in this muscle, now let us start with it. Whenever there is an impact, so this arrow is showing the impact. When the impact is falling, what is happening here? The length of this is changing. This whole part, length is changing. So, this is it. Change in length. Okay. This change in length is sensed by this element which is present there. And interestingly, if you look at them in a cross section of a muscle, in a thin slice of a muscle, you will see two distinct innervation of a thread like innervation on their surface. Okay. Those two different thread like innervation is something which will come now. Okay. So, let us again rehash. So, here you are having the intrafusal fiber in the form of muscle spindle, that is the terminology which is used, which are the sensory elements sensing change in length of skeletal muscle. Okay. So, now our next job will be to dissect out the innervation of the neurons, which are the thread like. So, today what we will do, we will close in here. In the next class, slowly we will move on to the innervation and we will formally introduce what is a neuron, how it transmits its signal, and how this complex circuit functions and what made us what we are. Thank you.